Joining us now once again is Roz Keith, the Executive Director of Stand With Trans, back with us once again on the Megacast. Roz, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. This is, I guess it's starting to be a regular thing, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, glad to have you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Happy New Year to you and everyone involved with your organization. For those that aren't familiar, for those that didn't join us the last time we had you on, or hearing about your organization for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about Stand With Trans and give us a bit of an origin story for your organization?
Sure. So Stand With Trans began in 2015 with really just an idea. Our mission is to support transgender and non-binary youth so they feel supported, empowered, really giving them the tools and the life skills so they can live their authentic life. And along with that comes educating the families, educating community, really teaching people what it means to be transgender. We know that this kind of support and education, if you will, and access to resources is life-changing and life-saving for so many. We started the organization because in 2013, almost 9 years to the day, my younger child, who's now 22, but my younger child at the time came to me and said that he was transgender. And if you are at all aware of what's been talked about in the media of late in the last couple of years, you're probably somewhat aware of what's going on with there's a lot of discrimination, a lot of transphobia, a lot of bills discriminating against youth in schools and trans people in general. But 9 years ago, none of these conversations were happening. And in fact, you could use whatever bathroom you wanted and no one even blinked an eye. So I didn't know anything. I didn't know the word transgender. I was really not surprised, I guess, by my son's declaration, but I had no idea how to help him, what it meant, what the long-term outcomes would be. So I had a lot of research to do, and I just started Googling. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot that came up, and there really were no resources, at least in the Metro Detroit community, and I wasn't even finding anything nationally. We couldn't find trained mental health support. We couldn't find the right medical support. In fact, there was one pediatric endocrinologist, which is the type of doctor who prescribes hormones to people who want to medically transition. There was one in the area, and she didn't take our insurance. There were no support groups. There weren't any books I could find at that moment. So it was really heartbreaking. I couldn't find what I needed to help my child. That was the most difficult part of the entire early process, was not having access to support and resources that would make a difference. So, about a year and a half or so in, we were working things out and cobbling together a plan for our son. And we realized, as we started to tell our story and tell our story publicly, that there were hundreds and thousands of families out there just like ours. And we really had no idea, because we were isolated and we felt so alone. But seeing that outpouring, and families who were just hungry to support their child, love them unconditionally, and were just looking for some lifeline, that's where the idea of Stand With Trans came from. And ultimately we filed for our 501c3. I have to say, I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. Maybe I shouldn't admit that, but we just wanted to help. We just, I knew what our support meant to our child, and we wanted to be able to offer that to other families who were struggling. So here we are, nearly 7 years later, organizationally.
Yeah, 7 years of Stand With Trans, founded in 2015, and then, of course, your journey about 9 years ago, beginning with your son coming out, and so back then you said that there were very few resources, if any, that you could find to help with to help your son, to provide the assistance that he needed, that your family needed as he was transitioning. And so now 7 years later with your organization, a lot of these resources are being provided by your organization. And that's arguably the most important impact to have, is because for groups that are marginalized, for groups that are being discriminated against, that are either having resources pulled away from them or simply not provided to them at all, having resources that they can get more information, that they can get the supports they need, becomes so critical. So for families with trans kids, or for trans individuals themselves that are looking for these resources, what are some of the resources that are provided to them through your organization?
Sure. So we have, kind of going back to our beginnings, the very first program or ongoing program that we developed was a support group network. And we now have virtually a number of groups throughout the month. Up until 2020, we had groups in person all over the place. We had about 12.5 groups that parents and young people could access. Right now, it's all virtual. So they're for tweens, ages 9 to 12, teens, 13 to roughly 19, and then non-binary young adults, 18 to 24, and parents and caregivers. And those happen throughout the month. They're all on the standwithtrans.org website. They're facilitated by those who have been trained. So parent groups are facilitated by parents. In fact, I facilitate one that's happening tonight. So if anyone needs support, it's at 7 p.m. Eastern. And that really, it's so important. And, now one of our biggest challenges, of course, is that our virtual world is continuing, that we aren't yet able to start adding back in-person, indoor support groups. We were on the verge of that about a month ago, but we're, given what's happening with COVID, we put a pause on that. So, it makes it challenging for youth who are just who want to connect and who want that community. And they don't necessarily want a support group. They just want to hang, and they want to meet other kids like them. So that's something that for 2022, we're really going to be working hard on, is how can we bring that engagement and the fun and the community building back to the community and back to the youth, so we can give them some of what they need while still being safe and being virtual.
We're joined by Roz Keith, the Executive Director and founder of Stand With Trans, joining us on the Megacast. You can learn more information about the organization by visiting standwithtrans.org. And so, Roz, you mentioned that a lot of these programs, these support groups in particular, are virtual due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But on a broader sense, on the COVID-19 front, I would imagine, given the struggles that are often had by LGBTQIA plus individuals, by trans individuals, certainly on the medical front in normal times, that those have been amplified and those have been even greater during the COVID-19 pandemic, whether it be for simple checkups or for COVID-19 related treatment. How has the implications of the pandemic changed the way that you approach providing these resources, or at least, or better yet, let me say the necessity of these resources being provided to trans youth, to trans teens, to families of trans individuals, because of the crisis that we continue to be dealing with, as well as the crisis that the trans community has been dealing with, unfortunately, for so long in the medical community?
Yeah, wow. Well, that's a big question. Yeah, so one of the things that we're seeing across the board is the isolation due to being sequestered at home, which is still going on. Even though many kids are back at school, there's still a lot of virtual everything going on. And it has increased significantly the need for mental health support. Often kids aren't out to their families. And if they have to be at home, if they're going to school virtually, that means they're at home with unsupportive family members practically 24/7. And that is just exhausting and wears on the psyche and is not, does not create any positivity in the moment for trans youth. So the need for the mental health support has grown. The good news, it's sort of a good news, bad news. The good news is we have more trained clinicians than we had several years ago, but there still aren't enough. And they're working long hours to be available, but many are not taking new clients. Many have waiting lists. So it's really tricky. And then you've got the whole social distancing and pandemic piece of it, where most of the therapy now is televisits. And telehealth is a beautiful thing, but not everyone feels comfortable talking to a therapist like this, on the screen. It's really not as personal, and it's just, so it brings a lot of challenges. One of the things that we're trying to do right now to help support that is we have a program that actually is funded by the United Way of Washtenaw County to bring to pay for some therapy sessions for youth who live in Washtenaw County. The therapists can be anywhere in Michigan, so we're working to secure. We've already got 3 on our list, and we're recruiting for youth to apply. So we will pay either a copay if there's insurance and they can't afford the copay, or a session fee if there's no insurance, and the youth will receive up to about 8 sessions. So it's short term, it's not a long-term fix, but it will provide access to those who just, can't find somebody. Their situation, their financial situation has changed. They can't afford to pay for multiple sessions. So we're hoping to get more of those support systems to the youth who really need it. And, yes, it's limited. There's only a small bucket of money and it's in one county, but hopefully, these programs will grow. And then while that's happening, more therapists will get trained, more therapists are graduating and becoming licensed. So it's a slow process.
We're joined by Roz Keith, Executive Director of Stand with Trans, joining us on the Megacast. You can learn more information about the organization as well as its programs and resources by visiting their website at standwithtrans.org. And Roz, you offer many parent support groups as well for parents of those with trans children or teens. How does the journey differ for parents as opposed to their children? I would imagine in this process, because I would imagine for some parents like yourself who are very supportive of their child's gender identity and are working with them as they make the transition, as they begin to identify with their true identity. But in some cases that may not always be the common case with parents. So what resources are provided to help parents not only learn more about their child's gender identity, but also to help with the transition in general, to make sure that it is comfortable and is smooth, the entire process of coming out for the child?
Yeah, great question. So there are most everyone, every parent who finds out that their child is transgender has some feelings wrapped up in that announcement. Maybe they saw it coming. Maybe they, already knew. Maybe it was a total shock. We're going to, lay money on the fact that every one of these parents loves their children, would go to the ends of the earth for them. But there seems to be this shift. They find out the news, not everyone, but there are a lot of parents who find out the news and they just they're unable to kind of see beyond their own feelings about it to help their child. And I'm not saying this happens all the time, but we do see a lot of this. In fact, this question just came up recently from a group of therapists and how to help parents who say, I don't know how to deal with the loss. I'm grieving. I feel like I'm mourning my child. I don't have a daughter anymore. So there's a lot of very complicated emotions wrapped up in the process. And one of the pieces of advice that we like to share is you own your emotions. Those are your feelings. And you have to separate them from the way you feel about your child. And if you come to a support group or you go to therapy or you talk to your spouse, you read up on the subject, whatever works for you to manage those feelings, take that path. But on a parallel path, you have to demonstrate that support to your child. You have to be positive. You have to allow them to take the lead and help them get to that next step. Because if you share those feelings with your child, they feel bad, they feel guilty, they feel like, maybe I shouldn't transition because this is making my mom sad, or this is, creating a lot of angry feelings. So, kids take that all on, and it is not okay for us as parents to put those emotions and those feelings onto our children. So it's very tricky to walk that parallel line, that parallel path, because the feelings for a parent who are struggling, a parent who is struggling, are so powerful. But there's a video out there, and I'm going to botch it terribly, but it talks about, you're taking a trip and you've packed for Italy. You've planned this trip for months and months and months. You cannot wait to get there and to tour and to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa and go to the Italian Riviera and drink Italian wine. And, you're about to land, and the pilot comes on the plane and says, welcome to the Netherlands. And you're like, wait a minute, the Netherlands? I thought I was going to Italy. And so having a child who comes out as trans, or having a child that has any differences whatsoever. So there could be a learning deficit. Maybe they have Down syndrome. It could be any number of things, but it's not what you expected. It's not what you expected when you were anticipating the birth of your child. It's not what you expected when you held this baby in your arms, or even, watched your toddler begin to run. And so a lot of it is helping parents to manage the change in what will be. We all have dreams about things, or we anticipate what the future will look like. And it doesn't always come out the way we planned. So, for parents, I just encourage them to talk to someone, come to a group. There are so many books now. I found one really great book 9 years ago, but there are so many. We have this huge book list on the Stand With Trans website, which is an incredible resource. We do book reviews every month that goes out to everyone on our mailing list. And many of them are from parents who have walked this walk and come out the other side. And that can be really helpful. So I'm not saying, don't honor your emotions and don't let yourself feel things, but put things into context, keep them in your lane, and then allow your child to progress on the path that is needed for them.
Roz, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.